Morning, church. Good seeing you this morning. For those online, give someone a digital high five on there. It's always good to have everybody. Man, I'm excited about today's message. But really quick, I want to just make sure I give a quick thank you to everybody. Haley let me know that we've picked up a lot of new Serve team members in our Destiny Kids Junior area, which is exciting, which is awesome. It's great. There's still room for more, so if you're sitting here thinking like, oh, good, now I don't have to respond to the call that the Lord placed on my heart, you're wrong. You still need to respond to it, but it's just I'm appreciating and thankful for the ones who did it. Man, I'm excited about today's message. So I don't know about you. Something that I've been experiencing really for the last several months is this thing, and I've been praying and I've been thinking about it, and sometimes feeling real confident about it, and sometimes feeling just completely at a loss. And it's this idea of like, what am I supposed to be doing? Anybody else been struggling with like, what am I supposed to do? Like, what am I supposed to do? Like, right now, because I'm a bit of a planner. Like, I like to plan things. I'm not like hardcore planning, but I like to plan things. And it's really hard to plan things when things constantly change over and over and over again. So it's like, what am I supposed to do? Some of you are like, oh, hey, school's about to start in 2 weeks. It's like, oh, no, psych, school's going to start in 4 weeks. Oh, no, psych, it's not even going to start. It's going to be online only. Oh, no, psych, just kidding. Like, you don't know. Like, you can't plan. Kids, like, it's like we flip-flop and we snip-snap and we just keep going back and forth and we don't know what to do. And it's really hard to know how to plan. And just when you think like something changes, you say, okay, don't worry. If anything this season has taught me is to be adaptive, and I'm going to adapt. So I made a new plan, and then that plan changes. But you can only do that so many times before like you go insane. And you're like, I don't understand. So the planners are struggling during this season. But even the go with the flow people, like, you don't even know what flow you're in at this point. You're like, this is like, it's just circling me down in a vortex. I'm being pulled under. I'm not flowing anywhere. I've been sucked in, and I don't know where we're going or what direction is up and what direction is down. And I know it's different for different people. I told first service, and we wouldn't be really family if I didn't tell second service. But, Pastor Andrew, he is a big planner. He loves to plan. And if you've ever done any event with him or sort of like he's planned, like meticulously planned. He's got everything planned, like just planned to the nth degree, and it's amazing. And if you ever do an event with him, it's great because like there's no doubt about what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. It's awesome. But so when we worked youth together, like that was how he was. But because I cared about him as a person and developing his character, I would sometimes just completely change all the plans last second. Like, and just ruin months of planning and be like, you know what? I know we've done all this and you're all the way ready and we're going to change it. And some of you who are planners are like, I knew I didn't like you. No. We would change it. We would change the plan. But here's something that Pastor Andrew like, and it was like he would get stressed, like, oh my gosh, like, the plan. And he had like a coping mechanism because planners have coping mechanisms. Like, and what his coping mechanism is, he would get real stressed. He'd be like, oh man, and he would go to his office. And by the way, we shared an office, like our desks touched. So like we would look at each other. So like I would change his plans and he'd be like, okay, I'm going to my office now. And what he would do is in his drawer, he would have a brand new, never worn, never washed pair of socks. And he would take his current socks off and he would put a fresh pair of socks on. And that's what would and everything would be okay in the world. Like, because if fresh socks can still feel that good, everything else is going to be okay. And he would just put those on and be like, I feel bad. It doesn't matter that Jonathan just ruined 3 months of my life and it's just gone. And now I change things on him and he doesn't even have to change his socks. Like, that's like a great thing. Like, hey, we're going to make this change because we still do it. I still do it to him now, just in a different scale, and it's no longer just youth. And he says like, hey, you know what? I don't even have to change my socks. But like, there's this idea we don't know what we're doing, right? And if you know what you're doing, come see me because that would be great. Like, I would love to find out some more knowledge. But everything's up in flux, right? We don't know what's going on with the economy. We don't know what's going on with the election. We don't know what's going on with school. We don't know what's going on with the virus. We just don't know. And so what I've found myself doing constantly or regularly is going to God and saying, God, what am I supposed to be doing? What am I supposed to be doing? Because the reality is this. We know we're supposed to trust God. We know we're supposed to rest in God. But the thing that the Bible makes it clear is rest in God is not inactivity. Rest in God is spirit-led activity. Is being directed by him into the activity that you're called to do. Because the thing that I can tell you this with confidence, even though I don't know what's happening or what is going to happen, God does know. And he knows specifically for your situation. So he can lead you and guide you and give you next steps and tell you ways to go and things that you can do that may make no sense in the natural. It may go against what the professional recommendation is for this week, but he knows and he cares for you and he has a plan. And he has a purpose and he can guide you. And that's resting in him. That becomes this spirit-led activity. And so in this process, I thought, man, a good person to ask, like, hey, what should I be doing right now? I thought, a good person to ask is Jesus. When in doubt, ask Jesus what you should do. And I was led to this section of scripture, and I want to talk about this idea that someone asked Jesus, what's the greatest command? And ultimately what they were asking is like, what should we be doing? What's the most important thing to do, Jesus? What's the most important thing? And we're going to read it from two different places, one in Matthew and one in Mark. So in Matthew chapter 22, verse 37, Jesus replied this: "You must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And secondly is equally important. Love your neighbor as yourself. The entire law and all the demands of the prophets are based on these two commandments." Man, this is like just a few statements in English, but there's so much here that we're going to unpack this morning. So just verse 40 where it says, the entire law and all the demands of the prophets are based on these two commandments. I want to make sure we understand what we're talking about. When he says the entire law, he doesn't mean like the 10 commandments. Right? Like he is talking about the Jewish books of law, which we would have, sometimes people call it the Pentateuch or the Torah. It's the first 5 books of the Bible. So Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. That is the law. And if you've ever read those, which some of you have, many of you have started and some were failed, somewhere around Deuteronomy, or maybe you made it to Numbers and then you quit. But like when you read through all those things, there's a lot of rules. And he says not just those rules, not just those laws, but all of the prophets. So the major and minor prophets, your Isaiahs and your Jeremiahs and your Micahs and all those prophets, everything in those books, like everything that's there, all of that can be completed and fulfilled to perfection if you just do this. If you just do this thing. If you just go in and you find this stuff. And you're like, oh, well, that's all. I just have to completely love you and completely love others. Like, well, how hard is that? And if you're a human being, you realize, like, impossible. Like, God is hard enough. Oh, I got to love God, who's perfect, who loves you. He's like, but you also have to love man the same way. And man is not so perfect. And man is not so pleasant sometimes. But we have this. And so, but I want to look at it again. Because in Mark, this is the same story, same answer. Mark chapter 12, verse 29, but it's a little different. It says, Jesus replied, the most important commandment is this: listen, O Israel, the Lord our God is the one and only Lord, and you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, and all your strength. The second is equally important: love your neighbor as yourself. No other commandment are greater than these. So you notice this is a little different. The heart is the same, like the gist is the same, like everything's there. But you notice he starts it off a little different. And then did you notice that he says you're supposed to love God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, and all your strength. But earlier he said your heart, your soul, and your mind. So one's 3, one's 4. We got a 3, we got a 4. It's not that the contextually is different. But the words are different. The descriptive adjectives are different. And really the ones that's different there is you have this idea that it has mind and it adds strength to it, whereas strength wasn't there before. And so I want to look at this because Jesus says it's important. And here's the thing that we need to know. But in both these instances, which some people will say this was 2 different times this question was posed to him. Some people will say it's the same time. It's hard to know from a timeline perspective definitively. But both times, or this time, in both occasions, Jesus was not just coming off with something off the cuff. Jesus was actually quoting something. Jesus was actually quoting the law. Jesus was quoting Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 4 and 5, and then also Leviticus 19:18. So Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 4 and 5 says, listen, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord alone, and you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your strength. So now we lost mind, but we got strength. Okay, we're going to get there. Don't worry. Leviticus chapter 19, verse 18 says, do not seek revenge or bear a grudge against a fellow Israelite, but love your neighbor as yourself. So I want to focus more on Deuteronomy 6, chapter 4 and 5, because this prayer that says, hear, O Israel, the Lord your God is one, that you have to love your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind. This prayer is a daily confession that every Jewish person knew, because this prayer is called the Shema. And the Shema, the Jewish people were supposed to pray every morning when they woke up, and they were supposed to pray every night before they went to bed. This was a prayer and a confession and a statement that they were to say every single day. And so when Jesus said, here's the greatest commandment, love God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind. When he said, here's the greatest one, it wasn't like people were like, oh, I've never heard that before. Because in the context, he was speaking to Jews who all of them grew up saying this every day and hearing it every day. They learned it. So when he said it, they understood. That now the twist that Jesus put on it for our references, he said that you're not only supposed to do it for God, but you're supposed to do it for others. When he added people there, that was like kind of the wrench that some people were like, wait, that's a little harder. But the words in Hebrew are so important. And I think that it's so important when we study the Bible that we learn a couple things, that we understand the historical context of how they were written and the understanding of when it was written, and we understand some of the linguistic nature of what's being said, because sometimes those things can get lost. Because in this example, Jesus quoted the scripture. Jesus said it in Aramaic, and then they recorded it in Greek, but he was recording something that was originally written in Hebrew. Can you see how sometimes this can get complex? Google can't even translate like English to Spanish 100% right all the time. You know what I'm saying? Like, and all of a sudden we've got like these multiple languages. Oh yeah, and thousands of years history and culture and differences that have been associated with it. And so we're going to look at this Shema, this prayer, and we're going to break it down so we can understand. So the very first thing, when it says, listen, O Israel, or some versions will say, hear, O Israel. The first word we're going to talk about is the word hear, which this is where the prayer gets its name, which is Shema. It means to hear. But in Hebrew, it's a little bit more of a diverse word. We're going to look at some different scriptures to help us understand contextually what everything's mean. So Psalms 27, verse 7 says, hear me as I pray, O Lord, be merciful and answer me. So in this idea, we have two different pictures. He's praying to God. The psalmist is praying to God and saying, hey, I want you to hear me. I want you to listen. But I'm also asking you in the process of listening to do something. That there's an action associated with the hearing. It's not just hearing, like that's important, but there's an action that's associated with it. This can be a little even more clear in Exodus chapter 19, verse 5. It says, now if you will obey, and the word obey there is Shema. Many times in the Old Testament when it says obey, it's actually not using the word obey, it's actually using the word listen, hear. That if you will obey or Shema me and keep my covenant, you will be my own special treasures from among these peoples to the end of the earth. So the Shema has this idea of hearing, of listening, like physically hearing these words and listening, but it also has this idea of a focus, like, hey, focus, like listen. Maybe you've ever said to that kid, like I don't know if your kids like don't listen sometimes, and like at some point when they're just like driving you out, you're like, listen! Because they were hearing you the whole time. They just weren't hearing you. They weren't listening, right? If there's any teachers in the room, you can have a whole class that hears you and they're not listening, right? Sometimes you just have to be like, listen, focus. Sometimes I do that like real loud because some of you had already been on your phone, right? And I need to like get you back. Not you, Gru, not you. So, did he say something? Yeah, I've been talking the whole time. We have a focus. There's a focus. But the Hebrew also has this idea of a response. In reality, it's a response. There is a response. When Leah got pregnant the second time in Genesis chapter 29, verse 33, it says, she soon became pregnant again and gave birth to another son. She named him Simeon, for she said, the Lord heard that I was unloved and has given me another son. So he heard me and he gave me. He heard and he performed, and I named that son Simeon, which means he hears me. That's what Simeon means. He hears me. Like there's this idea. So within God's covenant of hearing, he's not only expecting you to hear the fact that he's speaking to you, but there's an action or a reciprocation of doing what he says. like of doing what he says. And maybe the parents in the room can understand. I tell my kids all the time, I don't just want you to hear the words that are coming in my mouth. That's important, and that is the first step. But then I need you to actually do what I asked you to do. It does no good for me to be like, hey, go clean your room. Did you hear me? Yes. And then an hour later, I go up there, and it's the exact same way they left it. I heard you say it. I just didn't do what you said. And guess what? There's no one in this room who has not been guilty of that at some point in their life. That you heard, and you didn't do it. Maybe it was your parents, maybe it was a boss. I know none of you would ever not do what your boss asked you to do. Never. Maybe, though, it's sometimes hard because God speaks to you, and he's spoken to me. And you would think it'd be really easy to say, well, the God, the creator of the heavens and the universe, the one who knows the beginning and the end, is telling you to do something, so therefore, of course, I'm going to do it. But sometimes we don't. Sometimes we know God is calling us to something, to start something, or to stop something, or to give something up, and we don't because it's hard, or because it's uncomfortable, or because we like it. Like, there's a reasons why we don't, but sometimes we listen, but we don't do. That's why the Bible, even in the New Testament, says that I don't want you to just be hearer of God's words, but doer of God's word. And we must know that the reality is we're not doing it to earn God's love. We're doing it because God already loves us. There's a principle. So we have this word here. Here. Now this next one, it says, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God is one." Okay, the word Lord is this awesome word. The word Lord in your Bibles, it'll be all capitalized. It'll be Lord, all caps. And the word here in the Hebrew is Yahweh. You've probably heard that word, like Yahweh. And this is God's special name, like his special covenant name that he gives, which means like basically like he is, that he has been, he is, and he always will be. We were first introduced to this when Moses was in the burning bush. And he's like, I don't know, what do I tell them? What do I tell them? Who do I tell them sends me? He says, tell them I am that I am sent you, which is a different word. It's not Yahweh. It was like, but it literally means I am that I am that has sent you. And Moses was probably like, if I say that. God, grammar sometimes, like, I can't be that I am. And so God says, when you tell them, say, he is that he is. And he changes it, and that's what Yahweh is. So he is who he is. Like God is. Who sent you? Him. The one who was, the one who is, the one who always will be. That you don't need to worry about his past, and you don't need to worry about his presence, and you don't need to worry about his future. He is, he was, and he will be, and he's unchanging. That's who sent me. Right? And so we have this word Yahweh. And this is a very precious word in the Hebrew language. And Jews considered this word to be a holy word. In fact, they said that it was a word that was so holy that people shouldn't say it out loud. That they shouldn't say it out loud. So in scripture readings, when people are growing up, and Jesus would have done the same thing when they were growing up, anytime they came across where the word Yahweh would have been as the name of God, Yahweh, which God has other names of God, right? You've heard this, you have El Shaddai and Rapha and all these different things, right? So when Yahweh is supposed to be done, this Lord, they would change it, and instead of saying Yahweh, they would say Adonai. Okay, you with me? So they would come to where it would read Yahweh, but instead of Yahweh, they would change it to Adonai because they didn't want to defile that name by speaking it out loud on unclean lips. That was like their view. And so as scribes were transforming all these scriptures, they actually came up with this like little special code. And because they wanted people to know where Yahweh was written to understand that that was the word that was being purposed, but they also wanted people to say Adonai, they made this like kind of like a blend. So they took all of the consonants of Yahweh and they removed the vowels out and they replaced the vowels for Yahweh with the vowels from Adonai. And it made this in English, if you were to look at it, the way that the letters and everything would be, it'd be like Y-A-H-O-W-A-Y. And the way you would pronounce it in Hebrew or in English, if you were trying to kind of give a phonetical thing, it would be, sound something like Jehovah. And I'm not like a Hebrew sponsor. Okay, but what they did, remember, they took Yahweh and Adonai, and they blended them to make this special code. So when you were reading, you would say, this is Yahweh, but I'm not going to say Yahweh, I'm going to say Adonai, because they didn't want someone to make a mistake. But here's what's really funny. Not funny. And there's I found this really interesting because I'm nerdy, and so I'm going to make you be nerds too. When people who were non-Jews started finding these old scripts, they started reading through it, and they were writing it, and they were translating it, they kept finding this word, and they kept finding this word, and they're like, oh, look, Jehovah, Jehovah, Jehovah. And they ended up translating it in English to Jehovah. And maybe if you grew up like me, like we used to have songs about like all the different, like Jehovah Jireh, my provider, and we would dance, and we'd kick things. Like some of you know what I'm talking about. Like I was good at it. That's the only dancing I could do. And I was young. But Jehovah is actually not a Hebrew word. Jehovah was not actually a Hebrew word. It was like how you would phonetically pronounce this special word that was a blend of two different things. Now here's the good news. God knows the intention of God's heart. So if you've been like, I've been crying out to Jehovah Jireh my entire life, and you're telling me about it, it's okay. God knows what you're talking about. He knows you. He knows the inside. Like, it's okay. I just found it interesting that it was actually not a Hebrew word. It was actually an Anglicized word that came up later that because they read it and they didn't understand the context. But now scholars and things have gone back through and said, oh, hey, actually, this is this blend. And so, but we've got Lord. And the important thing that we need to know when he says Lord, the Lord is one, that God is one, he's over everything. He's it. This is the top. Past, present, future. He's the top. He's over everything. I don't know about you, but I need a Yahweh in my life today. I need someone who is over Corona and is over politics, who's over Facebook, who's over the grocery store. Like, I need it. I need someone who's over it. The next word I want to look at, because what it says is like we've told us we're supposed to listen, we've identified God, but the next word says that we're supposed to love God. We're supposed to love God. And the word for love in the Hebrew word here is ahava. And love in all languages is a very common word. Like love is common in English and Spanish and French. It's common in Greek. It's common in Hebrew. It's because it's a word. We use it a lot. And we know that in some languages, they have multiple words for love. Like the Greek is famous for having different words that have different descriptive natures of love. And then English is infamous for having one word to talk about your wife and pizza in the same like sentence, which is like a bad comparison to do. Right? Like we have this, but Hebrew has multiple words, but ahava is a very broad word for love. So it can be somewhat romantic. It can be romantic in nature, but it also can be more like platonic, or it can be parental. So like Abraham ahavad Isaac, right? Jonathan ahavad David. Right, so there's a friendship element, there's a brotherly love, there is a parental love. It can be romantic, although there's other words in the romantic love category that are maybe more specific to some of the things that we think of in that nature. There can be even like partnerships, like when the king of Tyre came and gave things to David, and they said because their countries loved each other, it's like a political alliance. So there's this ahava, there's this love. But here's the thing about love, that the context, we'll read it here, that we know about ahava. It's twofold, and we will understand this, but it's twofold. One, ahava is an emotion that one feels. You feel ahava, like you feel it towards someone. You feel it is an emotion. And here's the part that's important. When it's speaking this over you, this is not just how you are supposed to love God or how you're supposed to love others. We have to remember that he already is saying that he is this way towards you. So God, Yahweh, the creator, he ahavas you, which means that he, when he sees you, he has an emotional response of love towards you. He loves you. He always has, he currently does, and he always will. And it is an emotional response. You make God emotional. When he sees you, even when you made a mistake, even when you're not perfect, when he sees you, he has a love for you. He cannot help it. If you are in the room and you've ever been in love, and again, it can be any of these things, there are sometimes that love can overcome even other people's shortcomings. He felt like he feels it, like he loves, he feels for you. You create an emotional response in the heart of your Father God. But secondly, love is not just a feeling, love is a choice. So let me put some of these in context. Deuteronomy 7, verse 7 through 8, it says, "The Lord did not set his heart on you and choose you because you were more numerous than other nations, for you were the smallest of nations. Rather, it was simply that the Lord loves you." It's just simply that he loves you. Simply that he loves you. Simply that he ahavas you. That he has a feeling for you. Not because of what you've done, not because of what you did, not because of how big or how low. Like, he loves you. And I love this. The idea of it is unending. Jeremiah 31:3 says, "Long ago the Lord said to Israel, I have loved you, my people, with an everlasting love. With unfailing love I have drawn you to myself." I have drawn you to myself. But I like this. Deuteronomy 4:37 says, because he loved your ancestors, he chose to bless the descendants. Not only does God have an emotional feeling, but he also chose you, and he chooses to love you. It's a choice. He doesn't have to. He's not required to. He's not obligated to. It wasn't that he told you he loved you once when he slipped up, and now he's like, oh man, I'm God that never should change my mind, so now I have to love him forever. He chooses to love you. He chooses to love you. He chooses to love you past your shortcomings. He chooses to love you past your failures. He chooses to love you when you do good, and he chooses to love you when you do bad. And it's this two-headed thing. And if you've ever been in a relationship, you understand that sometimes you feel love, sometimes you choose love, sometimes you get both. But here's the reality. Love is this thing. And within the heart of God, you personally, not us as a congregational whole, although that's true, but you individually create an emotional love towards God, and he chooses you. And he chooses to love you. And he chose you even knowing the mistakes you've made. And he chose you even knowing the mistakes you make in the future. For me, sometimes that's the most humbling thing, is that he would choose me despite knowing all the times I'll fall short. He'd choose me despite all the times where I would make the wrong choice and make the wrong decision and hurt people and say the wrong words and get it frustrated. He still chose me out of love. So, we're looking at this love. So we're supposed to hear God and love. But there's these three things maybe there's four things. With all our heart, with all our soul, with all our mind. So the word heart in Hebrew is lev. And there's a longer version too that's the same thing. But the heart is something that's interesting. Heart, we have to remember, this is before they really fully understood what we understand today from a medical perspective of the importance that our brain does, right? We understand that the brain is like your processor and it tells everything what to do in the like we know, because we are so modern and so intelligent, how the brain works and what it does in our systems. But that was not a clear understanding when this was written. This wasn't even a clear understanding a few hundred years ago, like the importance of the brain. Like so much so, the Hebrew language actually doesn't even have a word for the brain. It has the head, like your whole head, like someone can lose their head. But the brain was not even because it was well, it's there, we just don't really know what it does. But the heart was something that they felt, because if you've ever had emotions, if you ever have feelings, that sometimes we talk about you feel it in your heart. Like that's the reason we do this, because there's a feeling that comes along with it. And the heart is supposed to be the place of your thought. Like people would say, if you read in the Old Testament or in the New Testament, or even other ancient writings, like you would think with your heart. Like there's an idea of thought that was being processed in your heart eternally. So it's like thought, it was a physical, like your heart was this idea, they knew it was important. Like they didn't know exactly everything, but they knew if your heart stopped pumping, you did not live. They understood that, right? So it's physical. They felt like your emotions were processed through your heart, both fear and pain and depression and joy, and then choices. So let's look at some verses. Psalms 37:4, it says, take delight in the Lord and he will give your heart's desire. So your heart has a desire, and if you delight in God, the desire of your heart will become manifest. Proverbs 4:23 says, guard your heart above all else, for it determines the course of your life, and the choices that you make are results of what you do and how you protect your heart. Jeremiah has a little different take, as only prophets sometimes. He, in 17:9, it says, the human heart is the most deceitful of all things and desperately wicked. Who really knows how bad it is? The psalmist in Psalm 51 said, create in me a clean heart, O God, renew a loyal spirit within me. I like Ezekiel 36. He said, and I will give you a new heart, and I'll put a new spirit in you, and I'll take out your stony, stubborn heart and give you a tender, responsive heart. And Jeremiah 31:33, it says, but this new covenant I will make to the people of Israel after those days. He said, I will put my instructions deep within them. I will write them on their hearts, and I will be their God, and they will be my people. So in this idea, when we're talking about heart, that you're supposed to love God with all your heart, it really is like with the whole essence of internally who you are, with your thoughts and with your emotions and with your choices, like both internal and external. Like there are these physical things that we're supposed to love God in this very emotional, internal idea. We're supposed to love him with our heart. But then the next one, it says soul. And soul is a tough, this is another one of those tough words, because the Hebrew word is nephesh. Nephesh. And if you want to know how it's literally translated, and many times how it's actually used, is it actually means your throat. Your throat. Psalms 105:18, it says, they bruised his feet with fetters and placed his nephesh, his neck, and an iron collar. Because you have to understand, we got to take it in principle. We don't understand brain. We don't understand some of these things. We're looking at things that we understand. The ancient people understood this. Everything that creates substance in life comes from your throat. What you eat goes through your throat. What you drink comes through your throat. And then the words that you say comes out of your throat. But your actions are many times, the air you breathe is coming through your throat. Like this throat is this important thing. And when the throat is not functioning, when the throat is speaking evil, then the throat is creating evil. And when you're consuming evil, the result is that you're going to be consuming evil. Like the throat is this important piece that represents, in many ways, the very physicality of who you are. But some of this stuff got confused, and especially modern, is because the Greek really changed, or the Greek people really changed our idea of what spirits and the spirit of man, because the Greek deity structure was this idea that you have a spirit that could be left, like your spirit can leave and like it hovers about and moves stuff. And that's a different perspective than what ancient people, that's a more, compared to this, more modern idea of what the spirit is. They had an idea of presence and being existing outside of your body, but it wasn't in the way that we would consider it now, like of ghosts and spirits. And so it was different. But in this word, this nephesh, like part of what it's talking about, this throat, is like physically who you are and what you allow into you and what you go out of. You're supposed to love God with. That's why Jesus says that it's not what a man puts in his throat, in his mouth, that defiles him, but what comes out. It's not what goes in that defiles you, it's what comes out that defiles you. Like there's an idea of this throat, that you're supposed to love God with this person, with this being. So in many ways we can look at it, and we can, instead of taking like the idea of a soul or like an internal spirit, and many times the way this would be, that was understood at the time was like with your actual physical being. With the physicality, your full physicality of who you are. Because we also have to remember that Jewish culture not only saw you as the physical being, but it incorporated the spiritual aspect as well. And so this completeness of who you are, you're supposed to love God with it. And then we get to the last one, which is the one that if you've been keeping count, it can be 3, it can be 4. And it's because maybe this is the most complicated one. In Deuteronomy, in the New Living, it says, with all your strength. But the word that's there is the word called meod or meod. And what's hard about this is that this, and grammatically speaking, is an depending on how it's used or where it's used, is either an adverb or an adjective. It's descriptive in its nature, and it comes along other words to create emphasis. Like that's what it means. So, for example, when God was creating the garden, he said he made this, and it was good, it was good, it was good. And when he made man, he said that it was meod good. It was very good. When they went to the land, they sent the spies into the promised land. They came back. They said that it is meod plentiful, like it is very plentiful. Whenever it says that Abraham was made rich, he was made meod rich, very rich. Like there's this a lot. And so the problem is it's a complicated word. And remember, we're talking about a Hebrew translation that was said in Aramaic that went to Greek, and now we're trying to look at it in English. And so there's a complexity here to what this is. And even when I say this word in English, it's going to seem a little confusing, but it's the best way, I think, to describe what it's talking about. The truth is of what this word is saying is it has to do with, there's a reality that you're supposed to be loving God with your muchness. With the muchness of who you are, with the overabundance. Because here's the thing, and the enemy will attack this, and we'll keep talking about it because it doesn't make a lot of sense in English. Some of you are here, and you always feel guilty because you don't feel like you're enough. You're not good enough. You don't have enough to walk. You don't have enough skills. You're not a good enough husband or a good enough father or a good enough wife. You are not good enough. Like you lack and you have a lack. And that is a lie that the enemy wants you to believe, that you cannot serve in the capacity that's meaningful because you are not enough. But there's others in this room who you've been told and you felt that you are too much. that you are too much, that you are too loud, that you're too happy, that you're too boisterous, that you have too many opinions, that you've got too much history, that you are too much. You are too much, you are too much, and you've been convinced that you need to tone it down to come to God because you are supposed to tone it down. And I'm here to tell you in both groups that that is not the case, that God has made you with muchness. You are not too much for God. He made you that way. You don't have too much to be able to be there. You are created that way, and you are called to love him out of the muchness that who you are. So just because you're a little different or a little unique or a little loud or because you look at things a little differently, that doesn't mean that you've been disqualified. He calls for conformity. In fact, he says to love him fully, you're supposed to be operating out of the muchness of who he is inside of you. And that muchness is how he loves you, because the thing you have to remember is that God loves you out of his muchness, which is overwhelming, all-consuming, too much and far greater than you can understand or imagine. His muchness is what moves to you. You are not too much for God. You are not too little for God. You have been created. We're all different. Some of you are quiet. Some of you are loud. Some of you have skills. Some of you don't. Like some of you, like you think, man, my opinions are too big. And my heart, like, we are all part of one body, just different parts. And God's called you out of your muchness, out of how he designed you to love. You are not too much. The people who believe that lie that you are too much, I'm telling you that is just as big of a lie and just a big twisting of God's truth as the ones who are here and you believe you're not enough. You are perfect. You are made in the image of God. That you have a muchness. That is who you are. And so ultimately, here's the thing. The reason that they couldn't figure out how to describe that muchness, they're like, well, is it strength? Is it mind? Is it power? I don't know what it is. Like, you're just supposed to love him with everything that you have, because everything that he loves you. His muchness. Which is why we have this richness of God. And his promises for you are yes and amen, and it's continual. They're more than you ever think or imagine, because he's overflowing and knows so much more. His muchness continues to encounter you. And so here's the thing. All of this comes down to this. This was not just a prayer, that's a confession. And I think that is something that we can read and we confess and we can believe. But the purpose of this commandment, the purpose of this prayer is the same purpose that the law had in general, that it was supposed to show you how good God is to you and how incapable you are of completing what needs to be done to reach God's standards. Because all this is saying that you need to do is you need to love God fully, completely, and all your physical person, all your emotional person, and every gift that you have. And then, oh yeah, if you think that you can do it towards God, you've got to do it to other people and not just the ones you like. You can't do it. Some of you are really good, I know, because you're amazing people. You could maybe do it for a year, but you couldn't do it forever. But the thing that's amazing is this prayer is supposed to say, wow, first of all, 1 John 4:19 says, I'm able to love because he first loved me. He loves me this way. He emotionally doesn't. He alone is God. He is above all. He uses all of his heart and all of his strength and all of his mind. He uses all of his internal, all of his external, and all of his tools at his disposal to love me. That is how he loves me. And he says that me hearing and doing is a principle of participating and completing the covenant. But the good news is this, that I no longer have to complete the covenant on my own, that I can be a covenant fulfiller through Jesus, who fully completed the covenant, who fully made the way. And so in Jesus, I can walk in this knowing that he fully loves me and that I can fully love him, that he's calling me to walk in this way towards him, that I can hear the words he has for me and I can obey, that I can listen to him and I can love him and I can walk it out every day. And during the season, church, here's the thing. Because of the standing you have with Jesus, you get to hear him. You get to hear him. He'll speak to you. He'll speak to you about your circumstance. He'll speak to you about this upcoming school year. He'll speak to you about your job. He'll speak to you about the economy. He'll speak to you about your relationships. And he'll speak to you about the election. He will speak to you, and he will speak to you clearly. The biggest thing that you have to do is to not just listen, but obey. And the reason that we obey is not out of fear of punishment. Christ already took your punishment. The reason we obey is not to earn God's love. He cannot love you anymore. He sees you and he feels it. He sees you and he chooses it. He can't help but love you No, the reason we listen to you is because he knows the things that are best for you. He knows the greatest plans for you. He knows the path to put you in the place where you can prosper the most, that he leads you and he guides you. And so today, as we get to say, God, I just want to hear your voice. I want to love you with my whole heart, my whole soul, my whole mind, with all my strength. I want to love you and I want to love others as the same. We're actually saying, in reality, God, I want you to guide every step of my life. I want you to invite me into every relationship. I want to invite you into every step, into every being, into every interaction. Help me hear you in every interaction, and help me do what you call me to in every interaction so that I can know who you are. And thank you, Lord, that I'm more than enough because of Jesus. Thank you that I'm not too much because of Jesus, that you've called me to serve and to complete with my whole person. And I've been uniquely gifted for such a time as this. For such a time as this. You've been purposed and destined to be here and to be in the season, to be in the city, to be on this earth and this time, and a time that looks like chaos and confusion. You were personally destined and trained and have the ability and equipped to be in this season. And all we have to do to be ready to perform and do exactly what he's called us to do is to listen, to hear, to Shema. And the result will be your life will be changed. Your relationships will be changed. So I want to do this, church, as we close today. I'm going to pray. And if you're here in this room and you've never accepted Jesus, I want to give you a chance to do it. And it's as simple as saying this prayer. And whether you're home or you're here, I just want everyone to repeat after me and say, Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for sending Jesus to die for me so my sins could be forgiven and my heart could be made free. We love you, Father. If you're here today and you've made that decision, I just want to encourage you to tell someone. If you came with someone, tell them. If you're online, tell somebody in your house. We're going to put a number on the screen. You can text us. We want to celebrate you. We want to answer any questions, get any resources in your hand. Just tell someone. Communicate that you made a decision to accept Jesus because it's the greatest choice that you can do. Your whole future, your whole life is changed. You've been stepped out of one path into another, and it's one of the most incredible miracles that God does on the daily basis. And I just want to speak this blessing over everyone else who's here this morning. Father God, Lord, we acknowledge who you are. We acknowledge who you are. We acknowledge that you're the Lord over all. We acknowledge the place and the position and the authority that you have in our lives, Father. Help us have hearing hearts. Help us hear and obey. Help us know how big, how wide, how great you are. That you alone are God, that you alone are Lord over all. Help us, Lord. Love you with our hearts, with our inside. Help us love you with our full physical body. And help us love you out of the overflow of all the incredible gifts that you've given us. And not just you. Help us do that for others. Help us be able to transform our world with a love that is uncommon, that's unnatural, but can only come from a result of being with you. Lord, we love you so much. We're so thankful for who you are. It's in Jesus' holy name we pray. Amen and amen. Well, hey, listen, church, we love you so much. You guys are prayed for. You are loved for. Next week, we're going to be we're either starting a new series or we may have one more one-off in the works. I haven't decided yet. So pray for me as I'm praying to the Lord and pray that I Shema him this week. All right? Okay, nerdy jokes. All right, hey, you're loved. You guys dismissed. Have a great rest of your Sunday.